And welcome back, fight fans. This is Ari Weiss from MMAsavvy.com, and I'm chilling with the man, Big John McCarthy. How you doing, John?
I'm doing good, Ari. How you doing?
So we're here at the King of the Cage. It's actually a pretty good event, but I actually am more concerned about how you feel about the big UFC Strikeforce deal. I know you work for both promotions. How do you feel about this deal?
Yeah, it's you look at it and there's positives out of it. You can say if you want to be negative, you can always be negative out of it, but everything depends on what happens with it. But the best part about it is people are going to be able to possibly see fights that they wouldn't have been able to see. It just depends on what Zuffa, who owns both companies now, decides they want to do. But for fans, it's great as far as the fights that you can see. There may not be as many fights, but there may be. So to sit there and to say, well, there's not going to be, you don't know. You don't know what they're going to be doing. So I just look at it, everything's a positive for the fans out there, because you know what? You're going to be able to see guys like Gilbert Melendez, who's phenomenal, fight Frankie Edgar, who's phenomenal. And all that stuff about, he's better, he's better. Well, now they get to prove who's better. You get to see, is Alistair Overeem better than a Brock Lesnar or a Cain Velasquez? Maybe he is, maybe he's not. You'll be able to see it now because of what they did. So that's always good for the fans.
Yeah, I mean, I had mixed feelings at first, but I think overall I'm into the deal. I think it's better to have everybody in one organization, then you can see the big fights. What do you feel? How do you feel about the unified rules, though? I know you've been around a long time. Do you like elbows on the ground?
You know what? I do, because of the fact that every time you take something away from the fighter, it makes it easier to defend against certain things. And when all you can do is punch, I can defend a certain way. I can use wrist, and I can effectively do things to protect myself, and you don't have that tool that's available to you to make it so I can't just look at doing one thing. And so I've always liked, the elbows. Yes, there are things that are bad about it. Do they cause cuts? They cause cuts. Cuts are not a big thing if you're looking at, the true aspect of the fight. People see blood and they go, oh my God, there's blood. It's really not that big a thing. And the amount of fights that are actually stopped because of a cut are really not as much as people put out there. So I always say, you know what? The unified rules have proven themselves to be very good for the fights, good for the fighters themselves, good for the safety of the sport, good for the entertainment of the fans. It's been successful. To sit there and to say, well, we need to do this too. They're working. Let them go for a while. There's rules that I look at and go, it's really not important. But the elbows, as far as it's the one thing I look at. When Zuffa bought Strikeforce, they said, okay, there's going to be elbows because they're going to follow unified rules. Right. So it's going to make some changes in some of the fights you see in Strikeforce. It does change fights.
I do like actually elbows on the ground. I think it makes the downed opponent work a little bit more. He can't just sort of be in the guard.
It's not as safe.
Right. So final thoughts here. Judging in MMA. I know you've been around a lot.
Why do you do this to me?
I know you've been around a long time.
Okay.
And I know you actually, I've seen a lot of stuff. You train a lot of the judges to make sure they really know, because it's different than boxing.
It is.
And with only 3 rounds, I mean, do you feel like we should eventually, maybe a half-point system should come about, or some new sort of MMA judging that's not just boxing judging? Do you feel like that should eventually happen?
Yeah. I tell people that listen, like, I'm partially to blame for the scoring of MMA as it is right now. Back when the UFC we were changing the rules for it, Jeff Blatnick and I sat down and we put a rule structure, and the first thing that we put into the rules was damage. That was your first criteria.
Right.
And the owner at the time was Bob Meyerowitz. He says, what are you doing to me? He's like, I had enough people coming after me, and the first thing they're going to say under my judging is you're looking for damage. You can't have that. So we went with effective striking, effective grappling, aggressiveness in octagon or cage control. And those were our criteria, and it works. But the sport has evolved, and the fighters have evolved, and the scoring of the fights needs to evolve with it. I personally believe that the half-point system, Doc Hamilton has come up with his MAS system, which is MMAS scoring system, is absolutely the next evolution of the sport and the way the sport needs to go. Not to the point where it's going to change everything. It's not going to change everything. You're always going to have close fights. You're going to always have fights that people look at and they think that their fighter actually did better than the other fighter because they have a passion about their own fighter and stuff, and that's always going to be that way. But the half-point system is being used right now in California in the amateurs. It's proven to be very effective with the scoring. There's certain things about it that we've even learned from doing it, where we have a table judge and you can actually use that table judge to look and see, are the judges looking at the right thing the way they're scoring the fight based upon what the fighters are doing. And there the table judge is judging techniques, the judges are judging other things, you know, outside of it. But you can see if you have one fighter that's doing everything as far as the table judge is concerned, as far as techniques, and they're losing the round, there's got to be a reason why that judge is looking at it that way. So it's a good way of evaluating the judges too. It's the next evolution of, you know, what we need for the scoring of the sport, and I think it's eventually going to happen.
Thank you, John. So one final question. We had Bruce Buffer on our show before, and he kind of, before the big John Jones victory, said John Jones is going to be the Muhammad Ali of MMA. Do you think, you know, the light heavyweight division has been in flux? No one can hold the belt. Do you think this guy's for real? Is he going to maybe win 5, you know, defenses in a row? How do you feel about John Jones?
You know, I've said for a long time, I thought when I first saw John fight, he's the new breed of the sport. And this is what I'm talking about, the evolution. And, you know, it's I was asked a long time ago, name the guys that are going to be the great, you know, fighters of the, you know, future. And John Jones was one of the ones, and he's proven it. He's proven himself. He fought a great fight. He's walked through everybody.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
And he's fought some guys that are very talented. You know, and I give nothing but credit to, you know, Mauricio Hua. He is a phenomenal fighter. He's had a phenomenal career. He still has got, you know, many good fights to come, I know. But, you know, John Jones handled him like, you know, he wasn't a problem for him. And I think he's going to be a problem for a lot of guys. But there's always going to be that guy out there that's going to present a problem. And, you know, there's going to be that foil to John. You know, look at Frankie Edgar. BJ Penn, everyone said, oh, that's a terrible fight. And I said, no, it's a good fight, you know, it'll be good. Frankie Edgar ends up winning twice in a row, you know, and he's the foil to BJ Penn when everyone said, you know, BJ was unbeatable in that. And I was one of those guys saying, you know, BJ's pretty tough in that. It's, you know, there's always going to be someone coming up that's going to give John a challenge. It's going to come, it's going to happen, but right now, John Jones does look like he's pretty unstoppable.
Well, thank you. That was the man, Big John McCarthy. This is Ari Weiss for MMAsavvy.com. Stay savvy, fight fans.